Realtree's Midwest Whitetail is brought to you by Cabela's, Cuddyback, America's Best Bowstrings, Drake Non-Typical, Easton Arrows, Frigid Forage, Fuse, Grizzly Coolers, Hoyt, Hoyman Tree Saws, Lone Wolf Tree Stands, Nikon, Ozonics, Redneck Blinds, RTP Outdoors, Spot Hog Releases, Wasp Archery, Viking Solutions, and Realtree.
It's the morning of September the 9th, and we have a pretty big day planned here. We're going to start dialing in on some of our early season stand locations and tactics. We're going to check some of these cuddybacks and see if we can't come up with a plan to get on all these bucks early season. We're up here at the farm Justin calls BBA, and I'm going to turn it over to him. He's going to tell you guys what we went over today so far.
Yeah, got up here this morning. We've already checked a few cuddyback cameras. On the east side of the farm, we've got a pretty good 4-year-old buck using the area back here pretty consistently around the set we call the peninsula set. It's a long, narrow strip of timber that leads out of a big block with a pond beside it. We got a cornfield to the north with a big and beastie plot to the edge of it, where we're hoping it pinches it down before he feeds out into a late season bean field, where we've had some velvet footage of him up here this year. I think I had like 8 consecutive days he's been in there. We've got cameras on both sides of the set, and he's using it pretty regularly. On the west side of the farm, we've got another buck that's using a spot back here we call Misfit, where I've had lots of history with him last year. He's a 5.5-year-old 8. So just going to play the wind right, depending on what kind of fronts we have. That's what we're going to dial in up here at this farm.
We're going to head over to a farm that Mitch is really familiar with. He killed his buck out of this stand location last year. And
yeah, got the Type 9 out of this setup. Actually just got him back from the taxidermist yesterday. He turned out great. Yeah. So we're going to run out there, check the stand, check the cameras, see if the 3 bucks that I'm going to be targeting this year, see if they have shed their velvet and if they're still consistently showing up. So and then we're going to go over that setup, why I have the stand there, and why I enjoy that set so much. So.
And then after that, we're going to finish up at Mal's farm, go over the food plots, see how they're looking, maybe check a couple cuddybacks. That farm, I'm going to be setting a stand up that's probably going to be for early October, mid-October range, and still hunting looking for that same deer that I call rain check. He hasn't showed up yet, but we're hoping that any day that changes and we can get into this early season and get things rolling. So it should be good, and we're excited.
Absolutely. Well, we got out here and checked the stand where I shot the Type 9 last year. We got in there, checked the straps, got a tree arm hung up, and getting ready for opening day of the season here next weekend. We're going to check the cameras here in a bit, see what deer we got on there, and see if it'd be an option to hunt early. This spot, I mean, depending on when the deer are here, this spot really is my favorite during the last part of October into the first part of November when the bucks are really up cruising. It's just a kind of a natural area for these deer to pinch through right here. If they come off the ridges and head out towards the main part of the crop fields, it's about a 50-yard shot across there, and that's where the Type 9 was last year when I shot him. So this stand is set up perfect for any easterly wind. Whenever the wind blows out of the east, it blows it off this real steep ridge. So that makes it almost impossible for them to catch our wind. Very few deer actually come from behind the tree here or up that real steep. I mean, that ridge is extremely steep, so seldom do we have deer come up that. It's just one of them natural spots where the deer just always kind of pinch through right here, and it is by far my favorite stand to hunt in the fall. Really looking forward to it. Can't wait for the season to get here.
Okay guys, we're out here at Mal's farm. The plots look excellent. Justin and I just hung a stand down the timber, and that's probably going to be a primary rut spot. We have really good luck early October on good fronts on this particular plot. Last year I had encounters with 2 of my hit list bucks, Sparky and Rain Check, and last year I didn't have a blind here, and I made it a point to put this blind at the peak of this ridge, because every deer that come into this plot, I would have had a shot at him right here if I would have had this redneck blind in place. So big steps this year. We got more beans in, we got more big and beastie planted. It looks great. And then we centralize this redneck blind on the peak of this ridge. The deer like to come up to the top of it and feed in these beans. Our beans are still green. It looks like they're going to be green come September 15th, and hopefully we can get some encounters in here early October again.
Welcome to Midwest Whitetail. In exactly 1 week we will be in this tree stand, and this is my best shot at getting either the Geronimo or the brow-tine buck. It's kind of a little funnel that they walk the edge of the beans in the timber, and they make their way by this location here. They'll probably stop and get a drink of water before they head into the bean field, and hopefully this next week I'll have one of them walk by and read the script for me, and I'll be able to put an arrow in one of them. We came out here today. We're just going to make sure the stand's ready to go, all the straps are secure, and I just dumped some water into the little watering hole. So we will get up in the tree and make sure everything's good, and we'll go from there.
I want to show you what I did immediately after I gained permission to hunt this piece, as far as scouting, or e-scouting what I call it, on my Mac here. Okay, so the first thing that I'm looking for is pressure, whether it be a new piece like this or even on public. I'm looking at different areas of pressure, specifically hunters. I talked to the landlord, and most of that is out the window. There's not really anybody that's hunted around here for about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. An occasional bird hunter, but that's about it. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay, to give you a broad overview, this center section, it's a small piece, but this is what we're looking at here as I outline it. And again, the first thing I'm looking for is pressure, as I said. The second thing I want to mention is that this map is fairly outdated. I think a lot of these trees in this pocket here, and here have really grown up, so it's not quite as barren as what you see on this map. Okay, moving on. So now that I understand that there's not much pressure on this property, the second thing I'm looking for is food. I always like to know where they're going to or potentially coming from. So to give you an idea, over here on the west we have all corn this year. Everything to the south is beans. On the east, it's a split between corn and beans, and then this entire center section is all beans up on top and down these hills and ridges. So I like to mark that and have a good idea and understanding of what they may be feeding on throughout the year as food sources change. Next thing I'm looking for is bedding areas. These you really have to kind of take a stab at it, but if you do it enough, you start to see the trends. It becomes a lot easier. So as I look at this in the topo lines, which I'm not going to get into, but we have a lot of northwest winds and occasional switch for a day out of the south. So the first place that jumps out is this ridge here. I'm always looking for a lot of transition line, whether it be from hard timber to maybe some cedars or prairie grass or even tree lines. Those are areas that I like to focus on, and this one jumps out big time to me. So this would be an area that I definitely want to walk, scout for beds. The next section would be in the center here. I see a couple drainages or ditches that all funnel to one place. So I would like to look off these points here and here for beds, in addition to this transition line across the road. You can see it's a giant ditch. And then the final place that I like to look would be back over here. For whatever reason, at least the properties I hunted, they love these little points that come out in the field because they're almost bulletproof when it comes to bedding. They can smell everything coming over the top of them, and they can see this entire field and this bedding area over here. So that's bedding. The next thing I like to look for are transition lines, or just things that jump out. And what I generally do, or what I first started doing when I wanted to learn more about topo, topo maps and the contour is when I just started, I like to take lines and just draw lines. Okay, so I went ahead and drew some lines that follow the contour a lot of these ditches or these drainages. And generally, most of the time, you'll see areas that jump out to you that you want to pay attention to. So obviously, one of the areas on this piece will be right here in the center. See where all these lines meet. You have a ditch coming from four different directions and meeting in one place. Now, this isn't necessarily where I suspect bedding, but I would like to see a setup somewhere in between that center point and the end of these lines. So maybe somewhere in here, from transition from potential bedding to potential bedding, or somewhere along this line here or on this back side. I don't always like to set up in these little funnels right in the dead center. I like to set halfway in between to catch them. Next section will be up here. There's a big drainage that comes from across the road and transition line up to potential bedding. So anywhere in here, I'd be looking for a potential location for a stand. So in overview, real quick recap. Again, there's a ton of stuff we go into on these maps and what to look for, but this is just a quick guide on how to get started initially on a new piece and what to look for before you put boots on the ground.